What's going on, everyone? John Matrix here. Hope you're all having a wonderful day wherever you're at, whenever you're watching this. We're going to be jumping into a 40K video here today. This one was requested by one of my YouTube members. This is by Pancreas Network. 40K isn't that overpowered. Links will be down below in the description, as always, to the original video without my commentary and reaction, and to Pancreas Network's channel. So please do me a favor. If you enjoy this video as we go through it, go over there and give it a like and give the man a sub if you enjoy his content and you aren't subbed already. If you'd like to join us as we do these reactions live like I'm doing right now, my YouTube members, there's a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description. We'd love to have you guys come in, hang out, join our discussions. So yeah, if you've been around the channel for a while, take a look at that. Consider joining if you want to take your sport to the channel to the next level. But with all that said, let's jump into the video here. Again, this is 40K Isn't That Overpowered by Pancreas No Work. Volume up, screen on, let's go.
Yeah, that's right. You have eyes. You read the video title. Let's get right to the chase. I don't think 40K is that OP as a setting. Now, for those of you who are a bit observant and haven't already started typing some real colorful comments for me, you'll notice the great big "that" in the title. 40K is pretty OP. It's got rocket launcher grenade rifles as a standard weapon for one of its factions. The Necrons have that funny button that...
See, and now, I'm just going to chime in here with my 2 cents real quick before we go forward in the video. So that's like, it depends on what you're comparing 40K to. Like, oftentimes, a lot of people will compare it to Star Wars. 40K would mop the floor with Star Wars, in my opinion, right? Like, obviously, if you put a single Space Marine against a platoon of stormtroopers, he would probably be able to mop them up like they're nothing. The only real things that would give any kind of pause to anyone in the 40K universe would be Jedi or Sith. And honestly, if you're talking about Jedi or Sith with any kind of like really powerful psychers in comparison in the 40K universe, those powerful psychers in the 40K universe would be able to overwhelm them. Powerful librarians would be able to take on even the most powerful Jedi or Sith. You know, so it's like, it all depends on what you compare them to. Now, if you like compare them to things in the SCP universe, it's a little more... It's kind of a harder comparison in certain ways because there's no real power scaling in the SCP universe per se. Anomalies in the SCP universe just do certain things regardless of anything, right? Like Peanut, anything, it just snaps their neck. That's just it. It kills them. That's just what it does. Certain reality benders are just extremely overpowered and can rewrite reality to their absolute will in certain ways, but they also can't do certain things and other, you know what I'm saying? So it's like anomalies in the SCP universe, they do specific things and that's just what they do. So like there could be certain weaknesses that could be exploited, and there are certain things that, you know, the 40K beings in that universe just wouldn't be able to contend with in certain ways, etc. So it's like, it all really comes down to what are you trying to compare it to? You know, one of the comparisons that I haven't really heard a lot of might be like Star Trek, as far as like space to space, ship to ship battles. I honestly don't really know. It could be interesting because a lot of technology in the Star Trek universe, you know, like even photon torpedoes, if they're set to maximum, are supposedly able to destroy entire planets. And, you know, 40K has, you know, technology that can destroy planets as well. So like ship-to-ship battles, the Star Trek universe could potentially even have the edge, especially because their faster than light technology doesn't require them having to go through the warp. So they might be able to be more maneuverable, use certain tactics, etc. And they might have certain technologies that would be able to disrupt certain things with the warp, etc., that could leave certain ships stranded. You know, who knows? I don't know. that would be an interesting comparison, one that I haven't really like heard of, but also haven't really looked up. So for me, in my opinion, when it comes to this stuff, it really all depends on what you're comparing it to. But that's just my initial 2 cents before we really get in depth into this video. Yeah, let's continue.
Can accidentally start a cascade of supernovas across the galaxy, and all that dark age of technology stuff that only ever gets brought into play when someone wants to make a point about 40k being OP. The setting is nuts, but I've gazed into the abyss of what's truly considered overpowered, and there's a lot of stuff that can beat it. A pretty good amount, actually. I've thought about how to phrase it best, and I think I've finally figured it out. 40k is like Ornstein and Smo from Dark Souls. If you want to get to the real big boys of the game, you gotta get through them first. And if you want your franchise to be considered truly ball-bustingly OP, you gotta get past the kind of crap 40k has in it. Please make all sorts of jokes about how 40k is the Dark Souls of Ornstein and Smo or whatever. It's a dead meme, and 40k is nothing if not welcoming to dead memes. So here's one more video to add to the pile of them I've made comparing other settings to 40k. Something small and easy to end the year on, yeah? For those of you with similar views to me, here's a video about nothing of particular importance. For those of you who make 40k your personality, I just have one question to ask. But can the Emperor beat Goku? Before I get started power scaling 40k into the dirt, however, there's something to discuss. Do you like learning? Do you hate school and how tedious and miserable it can be? Well then have I got the thing for you, because this video was sponsored by Brilliant.
Yeah, we're gonna skip ahead of his sponsor here, so if you're interested in supporting him, I don't know how old this video is, but check out his sponsor links and yeah, see if they would have any interest for you so you can support him.
Alright, let's start listing off franchises. This will all be rather light on specifics, by the way. The love I have for Halo, or Obsession if you're feeling less generous, isn't quite shared with everything else on this list. Let's start with a pretty common one. Overall, I'd say 40k wins. The tech is bigger and badder, the scale is bigger, and a lot of the psychers in 40k could demolish the average Jedi or Sith. That being said, Star Wars has some stuff going for it. The higher-end estimates of the Confederacy place their military at several quadrillion battle droids. That's
true, they would have a lot of numbers
you gotta worry about. So
that is a lot of numbers, but honestly, there's also a lot of forces in the 40k universe that have a lot of numbers. You know, orcs, Tyranids, etc.
drowning out a few Crusade fleets or Orc Waz and droids is entirely feasible. And the amount of Force users in Star Wars that veer into being eldritch abominations is a lot higher than you might think if you're not super familiar with the lore. There's Abeloth, which is just straight up an HP low.
True, Abeloth is literally like the manifestation of the dark side of the Force, and yeah, who knows? She could be essentially on like a Chaos God level of power.
Lovecraft creature. There's Darth Nihilus, owner of the coolest mask in fiction and a wound in the Force who eats planets for breakfast. And do you remember that time Anakin Force chokeslammed 2 gods in the Clone Wars?
Yes.
But despite this, the overall...
Which, that was super pimp. If you haven't seen the Clone Wars, definitely recommend it. It's one of the coolest episodes. And coolest lore of anything in Star Wars. Watching Anakin, like, literally make 2 Force gods bend the knee to him.
Scale and relentless warmongering of 40k means Star Wars is going to go down when you compare it to 40k. See, we're easing into things with settings I think 40k can beat. You gotta set the precedent, you know? That being said, I would take a clone trooper over the best guardsman any day of the week. Quite frankly, I'd take a clone over a good deal of space.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I would bet clone soldiers would be better than any just straight up Astra Militarum guardsmen.
Marine chapters. Delta Squad would body Cato Sicarius. Dead Space is real only here because I think it's cool, but necromorphs are damn scary. Humanity itself and the aliens in Dead Space probably wouldn't be seeing much competition against Warhammer. The necromorphs, though, those could be a problem. Convergence events and the markers would play merry hell on humanity, Tau, and maybe even the orcs. And a necromorph infestation on the large end of things is going to play a lot like a Tyranid invasion, only even more horrifying. Imagine a space marine getting necromorphed. That is an unstoppable monster. Granted, being an unstoppable horde of monsters isn't that special in 40k, I mean there's plenty of those already. A proper Tyranid high fleet or some orc warbands could probably take on the necromorphs. It'd be risky, and if the necromorphs win, they've got a new Brethren moon. But 40k also has plenty of ways to blow a planet straight to hell, so even the Brethren moons themselves are fair game here. Really, the Brethren moons and necromorphs are pretty fitting in with 40k. They're damn near unkillable to the point that I think shooting off their limbs in Dead Space doesn't actually kill them. It just immobilizes them, shutting them down in a way. Of course, Isaac Clarke was in no way prepared to deal with them, and he managed it, so I'm sure someone like Gilliman or Eldred.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is like, you have an average Joe worker who survives through the Dead Space like story, So, like, you would think that Space Marines, etc., would be able to deal with it. Even your average guardsman who might have been dealing with who knows what in the 40K universe would be able to get through it.
Could handle things. Another 40K win, but hey, if it's any consolation, Dead Space fans, I'd rather face most threats in 40K than I would a Necromorph. I can reason with the Tau at least, or at a stretch an Orc.
True.
I can't reason with the Ghost Lady telling me to make us whole. This will probably be a proper video on its own eventually, since I've been getting more and more into Battletech as time goes on.
I don't know enough about Battletech.
For now, I'll just say that on the grand scale, it's a pretty grim scenario for Battletech in this matchup. It's centered around a couple thousand planets over a roughly 500 light-year radius. That's the Inner Sphere, where most of the cool stuff in the setting goes down. It contains all the great houses, what was once Star League, and it's just about all the damn clanner scum care about. Through sheer industry and scale alone, Battletech loses to 40K. But saying that, on an individual level, I'd wager it's a much closer fight. Of course, even the mighty Atlas isn't going to be squaring up with a Warlord Titan, but come down to the scale of knights, and now we're talking about a real fight. While true, I would argue that even the most fearsome assault mechs are only equal to knights, battle mechs have a lot more in the way of versatility. A battle mech is a catch-all term for warfare platforms that can do any number of roles and also happen to walk on two legs. While there are numerous different kinds of Imperial Knights, you can safely assume they're in one of two categories. They're either going to shoot you with cannons, or they're going to try and chop you up with big chainswords. Battle mechs, meanwhile, can be scouts, artillery, massive platforms of light weaponry, and more. Some might as well just be a big gun with legs, such as an urban mech pilot armed with little more than his AC-20 and a very hateful attitude towards anything larger than 40 tons.
So it sounds like the battle mechs in this universe potentially could have the versatility to adapt and counter the knights from the 40K universe, essentially.
Some have melee weapons, because even in a setting as relatively grounded as Battletech, there are going to be some people who want to punch things with their giant robot. If you tell me you aren't one of them, I'm gonna call you a liar. There's a lot more you can do with a battle mech than a knight, or just about any of its non-imperial equivalents. And tell me that if nothing else, the Lyran Commonwealth wouldn't be pumping out Titan equivalents the moment they saw what 40K was bringing to the table. There would be people with bigger things than them. That is an insult that House Steiner simply cannot let stand. There's other smaller but still important things as well. Battletech FTL is fairly reliable, although it is slow, and unless you're skilled enough to jump to pirate points closer to planets, fairly predictable. But hey, there's also no monsters you have to worry about eating your soul whenever you jump to FTL speeds. So overall, Battletech loses through scale, but on the individual level, it's probably a lot more even. If nothing else, even a light mech stomping on a Space Marine is going to get the job done. Not much you can do about several thousand pounds of military hardware introducing you to the dirt. But with that, we've given 40K 3 wins so far, so I think it's about time to fix that. Put MCU slop or whatever abomination of filmmaking DC's putting out next out of your mind. I'm mostly talking comics. At their worst, just as bad in their own way, but at least no one's been shoving them down my throat.
See, I mean, I don't know. This is kind of an interesting comparison, right? Because, like, again, it depends on who you're talking about. But, like, when you're bringing in, like, Thor and Hulk and Wolverine and things like that, like, yeah, or even, like, the X-Men in general, I could see them, like, easily being able to deal with, like, Space Marine squads and things like that just because of their sheer nature. Like, Thor is a god, Hulk is an unstoppable rage machine, and the, 40K Space Marines, they're just going to want to keep throwing more military things at it, which is just going to piss Hulk off more and turn him into even more of a rage machine until he gets to, like, Planet Buster Hulk or whatever, and he just destroys entire planets. You know what I mean? So, like,
for the last 15 years. Now, if you're thinking on the lower end of things, then yeah, these guys are getting bodied. What the hell is the Green Arrow gonna do against a Space Marine? And if you're the kind of person who thinks Batman can prep time his way into fighting the Swarm Lord or Imhotech, I hate you. Prep time is what Batman fans use when they know they're full of shit. Of course, I do the same.
It's true. I mean, that really is like the crux with Batman. It's like, you give Batman enough time to prepare, he'll figure out its weakness and win. Like, that's basically what Batman does. But if you don't, he doesn't. Like, Hulk and Corn would immediately do a fusion dance. Right.
Same thing whenever people bring up Halo and the Halo array, so maybe I shouldn't throw rocks in my comfy glass house. I'm talking about the higher end stuff of the comics, like the Lantern Corps. They protect the entire universe. They could absolutely deal with the people in the fort.
Or like, you know, the Phoenix Force, dude. Like the Phoenix can literally alter and bend reality. You know, anyone with the Infinity Stones. You know, there's all kinds of things. But again, like even some of the, I guess, lower end high tier stuff, like they would have trouble dealing with Wolverine, dude. Like what really would Space Marines be able to do against Wolverine? Their bolters wouldn't be able to cut through him. I don't even know if their power swords would be able to like cut through the adamantium, you know, stuff like that, you know. Right, yeah, Galactus would tear him up.
40K universe. It'd take some effort, and they definitely wouldn't come away from it cleanly, but they could get it done. Or, you know, Superman? What the hell is a Bloodthirster gonna do against the Man of Steel? He's basically incorruptible, and he's more or less a physical god. No one's
yeah, like, unless they figure out he's weak to kryptonite. I mean, the caveat is that Superman is weak to psychic abilities and magic, so that could be a weakness that, like, you know, high-level psychers could probably mess with him, you know? But other than that, there's not really a whole lot that could be done.
Touching him, or the Flash, who's so fast to make Superman look like he's
the
moving
Flash
through syrup. And that's not even getting into the things like Galactus, who might as well be a Catan. There's all sorts of powerful beings in Marvel and DC that at the higher end of things make the 40K galaxy look pathetically weak. Sure, at the lower end of things, 40K is gonna stomp. I don't think Spider-Man can quip his way out of getting his head melted by Cairo's Fate Weaver. But that version of Superman where he sat in the sun for millions of years just absorbing more power, he's bodying anything the setting can throw at him. Or hell, Thanos. He casts Finger Snap. 40K is now half empty. God forbid there's any crossover beyond Marvel writing some Marnius Calgar books, though. I don't need half the Eldar lore getting sapped away. They're starving as it is. In fact...
See, for me, like, I don't think about comparing, like, the comic book stuff to 40K just because they're so different. I'm more of thinking about sci-fi settings, like, again, Star Wars, Star Trek, you know, stuff like that. Battlestar Galactica, you know, with Cylons, etc. That's more of what I think about.
In fact, in the spirit of superpowered beings bodying 40K... There's an account called The Drunken Guardsman on Twitter who did a couple of versus tweets about who would win, with one being 40K and the other being someone not from 40K. One of them was Sanguinius versus Omni-Man, and truth be told, that was one of the inspirations for this video. Anyways, to answer that who would win question, I have my own question for you. What the hell is Sanguinius gonna do when Omni-Man starts tossing capital ships at him from orbit? There's an argument to be made that maybe 40K could BS its way into a win versus Marvel and DC's stronger characters. Morality in 40K is a funny joke. Maybe they can brutalize the other two settings into defeat. You're not doing that with Viltrumites. They're a race of Supermans hell-bent on conquest and don't view other races as being worth jack. They can obliterate entire planets over the course of a few days at most, and have their own vast empire to rival 40K. And while I don't think they're incorruptible in the sense of being immune to chaos, why the hell would any one of them fall to it? They have everything they need and view non-Viltrumites as dirt. I've not read the comics, so I admit maybe I'm missing something, but I think chaos is on the chopping block as much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do think they might be able to body some of the Primarchs, you know, potentially. I don't know about necessarily the Demon Primarchs or even some of the Chaos stuff. But I guess, like, they're not as powerful as, like, Superman. They don't have, you know, they're definitely superhuman, but they're not on Superman level of superhuman, right? They're kind of like Superman lights. So I don't know, maybe some of the more powerful people in the 40K universe could, maybe some of the Primarchs. I think maybe the Emperor in his prime probably could, again, because of his psychic powers and stuff like that. You know? There's only like 50 Viltrumites left by the time of the comics, though. Yeah, like, I don't know. I personally don't know enough about the Invincible universe either. I just know from what I've seen of the animated show that, like, they're definitely powerful and they're definitely, like, very warlike and xenophobic, but they're not like Superman level of threat. So I don't know. And some, like, again, like Magnus with his psyker abilities and his, you know, he might be powerful enough to get in their minds and do things to them. Like, I don't know. I would have to know more about the Viltrumites, I guess, to be able to really say one way or the other, give my opinion one way or the other.
As anyone else. You could argue they might fall to Khorne, and yeah, they might, or they'd see it as selling themselves off to a higher power and tell Khorne to go kick bricks. With the exception of people like Magnus the Red at the very highest level of it, I don't think Psyker powers are going to do anything either. Viltrumites are at that level of physical power that just overwhelms anything else. An Eldar Psyker or a Necron Cryptek can prepare whatever spell or incantation to rewrite the Viltrumite out of existence that they want. It doesn't matter if in the time it takes to start casting the spell, Omni-Man can fly around the whole planet and rip their spine out from behind them. And even things like foresight that a lot of characters in 40k have wouldn't be of much help. Here's my reasoning for that. If you're tied to railroad tracks with no way out, you can safely assume a train is going to run you over eventually. You can't do anything about it, though. And while there's certainly not a lot of Viltrumites, there's enough that you can have a couple dozen of them on a single battlefield if you absolutely must have that. What the hell's the guard gonna do about one of them, let alone a dozen? Hell, if you throw enough of them at the Emperor, he's probably gonna get his shit rocked too. I have an immediate confession to make. I only set enough of them as a peace offering. One of them is probably enough. But yeah, Viltrumites beat 40k stuff. I only included them in the video because I have the Omni-Man skin in Fortnite, so if you disagree, I don't feel too passionately about it. But you know what I do feel passionately about? Or really all of Dragon Ball, but Dragon Ball Z is what makes people sit up. You know?
I mean, yeah, like, it's kind of hard to argue, because, like, even in the earlier stages, like, when Super Saiyan 1 became a thing during the Frieza saga, they had enough power to destroy planets, right? Like, Frieza could destroy a planet with just, you know, his little finger ball blasts. So obviously at this stage, you know, if you're talking about Dragon Ball Super stage where whole, you know, you're talking about Dragon Ball gods, Goku's fighting Beerus, the god of destruction, and like the aftermath is rewriting the universe and the galaxy. Yeah. You know, the Dragon Ball setting is gonna body 40k. I'm sorry.
You know what I've always found funny? Dragon Ball Z has some pretty fantastic FTL tech in it. I mean, Bulma and Mr. Popo went to Jupiter in like, what, 10 seconds? It takes Light 43 minutes to do that. That alone makes it stronger than 40k in significant ways. But let's not kid ourselves. No one cares about Dragon Ball's FTL technology. You're here for angry people screaming and punching each other, and by God, that's how Dragon Ball Z is gonna kick the hell out of 40k. Now, I think power scaling debates can be pretty whack, even though I've now made 5 videos doing more or less that exact thing. I've never claimed I wasn't a hypocrite. I really don't care about discussing who would win in a fight, Goku or Gear 5 Luffy. It's obviously Goku, so who cares? That said, I've been a Dragon Ball fan since I was little, and you can't be a Dragon Ball fan without at least being passively aware that there are entire communities of people who sit down and try to figure out exactly how much stronger Goku is from the start of Dragon Ball compared to Super. So in the spirit of the video and being the weeb trash I am, let's do some anime power scaling. Take a Cyberman. They have a power level of roughly 1 Raditz, that is. At half a Raditz, Piccolo could blow up the moon. Hell, at like a quart of a Raditz tops, Master Roshi blew up the moon. At 15 Raditz, Vegeta could blow up the Earth. To stop ripping off Dragon Ball Z Abridged, Frieza at less than 1% of his power destroyed the strongest warrior race in existence with a single finger, who themselves could take out entire planets worth of people as infants. What the hell is anyone in 40k short of maybe the gods gonna do when the Saiyan drop pods start landing? To be fair, if any of the people in this video are gonna do something like Fall to Chaos, it'd be the Saiyans.
True.
Thirsty maniacs sound like the perfect thing for Khorne, and I imagine at least a good chunk of them.
And I'm sure some of them would welcome the power up that they would get from Khorne to make themselves even stronger, to do what they would want to do even more. I mean, can you imagine that? Can you imagine, you know, Vegeta as the Demon Prince? That'd be pretty terrifying, honestly. Demon Prince Vegeta. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be pretty scary.
Them would probably embrace it wholeheartedly. Khorne likes strong warriors in fighting, Saiyans like strong warriors in fighting. Can you imagine a Saiyan Demon Prince? To hell with the Primarchs, Catan aren't walking away from that fight. Maybe that's how the Silent King shattered them all. He ripped open a rift to Dragon Ball and grabbed a couple of Saiyans to throw at the problem. And of course, named characters. Krillin is already obliterating anyone the setting can throw at him. Nah, you know what? I'm not taking the favoritism far enough. Yamcha could probably do it by the Cell Saga.
Yeah, you know. When Yamcha can body pretty much anyone in your universe, you know you got a problem.
The latest. But let's highlight my favorite of them all. Vegeta. As a good way to know if I'm absolutely hammered, see if I'm excessively posting about Vegeta on Twitter. He's great, and he'd rip 40K apart if he felt like it. Nothing's stopping him, because at his level, fighting is the kind of thing that can start shaking the universe apart, like Goku and Beerus almost did.
Right.
Psychic powers, you might say, since that's the default for whenever 40K faces a threat. Saiyans have no defense against magic. And I guess that's fair. It's not like Vegeta's ever fought someone who's both overwhelmingly powerful and psychic. It's not like Vegeta's ever fought against someone who's magical in one way or another. It's not like Vegeta's been outright mind-controlled only for him to break free because he's so full of his own shit he just ignores the mind control. He's not just destroying the setting, I'm half convinced he'd become a full-blown Chaos God because of how big of an ego he has.
Probably.
All hail Vegeta, the Chaos God of pride and not knowing when to quit. Don't forget the Gods of Destruction, or Zeno, who could just decide 40K has lost existing privileges.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they literally just wipe out entire universes because. So.
No fight, no Chaos Gods or Big E holding off his power. He just waves his hand and no more universe. 40K doesn't even beat Dragon Ball and racism. Until the end of Dragon Ball, Vegeta looked down on everyone who wasn't a Saiyan as dirt, looked down on Saiyans who weren't him as dirt, and looked down on Goku like he was dirt covered in vomit. And of course, who can forget about Frieza? Frieza would make the Eldar uncomfortable with how often he calls someone a monkey. You can find compilations of Frieza saying monkey on YouTube. One of them is over 3 minutes long of racial slurs. Frieza's the best villain, truly. But yeah, Dragon Ball stomps. I made a community post about this a while ago because I decided that, yeah, I should make a Dragon Ball 40K video. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but I did. So here's the abridged version, since it's about the most I can make without it being a pretty shite video even by my standards. God, I'm the cleverest man around, aren't I? Get it? The abridged version? Because Dragon Ball Z abridged? Get it? Do you get the funny joke? I'm moving on now.
I get it.
No more anime as a main topic, I tentatively promise. Now for this one, you may be a bit confused. Stellaris isn't really a setting with defined factions and whatnot. I mean, there's the preset empires, and they used the Commonwealth of Man for the trailer that introduced Planet Killers, but nothing beyond that. But look deep.
I don't know enough about Stellaris to, like, really comment on any of this right now.
Deeper at the things you can find in Stellaris, and it's the sort of thing that would make the Necrons afraid. The endgame tech is the stuff of nightmares. The machine ascension is just straight up Necron biotransference. The end of the cycle is the fall of the Eldar, if instead of just creating the Eye of Terror, it created an Eye of Terror that moved around the galaxy and hunted everyone down. The War in Heaven in Stellaris isn't some mythical background event, it's two colossally powerful empires unleashing weapons that can crack planets in half at a whim. And that's not even getting into the Become the Crisis path, where your civilization doesn't just reach a point of eclipsing the Eldar or Thousand Sons as Psychers, they become a race of Chaos Gods. Even before that, there's plenty of powerful things.
Oh, okay, so like, you can just ascend and become a race of Chaos Gods. Okay.
Things you can do, and with mods it gets even more ballistic, turning entire moons into weapons platforms, quadruple layer ring worlds around your stars, Dyson spheres across the Empire. You can create star-spanning nations that dwarf 40K in all ways possible. And while I'm not going to pretend that half the stuff in it isn't inspired by 40K, and by inspired I mean ripped off, it also takes it all to a new level. You know the Pretherans, aka the not Tyranids? Unlike the Tyranids, who are ever only hinted at most to be running from something, the Pretheran are running from something. Something that caused the galaxy to dim and then fade as your scientist watched it. And to top it off, the atrocities you can commit in Stellaris even eclipse 40K. Sure, you can do the classic kill all aliens thing and recreate the Imperium of Man for the 1000th time. No judgment here, every Stellaris player has done it. The game encourages you to be a monster, not just because of the buffs, but because it means the endgame won't be running at 10 frames a second because there's just too many different empires in the galaxy. But the things people have done in that game, my god. My favorite is the guy who enslaved part of an empire, turned the citizens into food, and then set up a trade agreement with the former empire to give them food. That mad bastard turned a species into snacks and then sold them back to their fellows.
Interesting.
Pay attention, Black Library writers. That's how you write a war crime. Now this is one hell of a setting. Here's the thing that inspired the video even more than the Omni-Man vs. Sanguinius tweet. For those of you who've never heard of it, the Zeely sequence of books is a science fiction series written by Stephen Baxter. I have yet to read it fully, but it's more of a setting-driven series and a character one to my knowledge. The people in it are vessels for the universe at large. It is also, to my understanding, one of, if not the single most overpowered setting in all of science fiction. Let's take the Interim Coalition of Governance, or ICOG for short. The ICOG is a brutal dictatorship that makes the Imperium look cuddly and friendly. I'm not just talking xenophobia. utopia, I'm talking sending trillions of child soldiers to die against aliens because it's easier to do than building robots or something of that sort. And who can forget skinning aliens known as silver ghosts alive being considered a family-friendly activity before the concept of family was done away with in favor of more child soldiers. And they're not poorly equipped by any means. They have melta-like weapons that can kill thousands in a single second. Their equivalent of an assault rifle is a gut weapon. If you're anything like me, you might wonder what gut means. To simplify it, take the Big Bang, the event that started our universe. Now turn it into a gun. The ICOG can throw stars at you. In their war against the Zeely, they threw so much shit at the galactic core that the entire thing glowed bright pink. They changed the color of the galaxy because of how violently they were fighting. They have time travel weaponized to the point that they use it to police their empire. If you commit a treasonous act, they don't just kill you. They torture you, kill you, then go back in time and do it to your past self who doesn't even know what the hell you were going to do.
Jesus.
Their military is in numbers far beyond the Imperial Guard that makes the old ones look like children, and they have eliminated all non-human life in at least one galaxy. So I bet you're thinking that, damn, the ICOG really is like the Imperium of Man, but even crazier. I bet they're the masters of their setting too, right? Not even fucking close. From the admittance of a member of it, they aren't the destined rulers of all reality, even with all of their tech. He outright compares mankind to vermin, spreading across the stars and multiplying in defiance of those who they know are their betters in every way possible. Let's start with the Transcendence. The Transcendence is humanity from the far, far, far future. What exactly they are is hard to define, because unlike most of the time with this sort of thing, the Transcendents are a race that is actually transcendent. They are to us what we are to...
I mean, that makes sense. They're called the Transcendents, so they would probably transcend anything that we would understand.
And trying to understand them is an exercise in futility. They wanted to create a utopia free of suffering for mankind. Problem is, they couldn't do that if there was any suffering, because they were every human.
Right, so...
Emerged
I have to wipe them out.
But also not, but also yes. If anyone in any timeline was feeling suffering, they were suffering and were weakened for it. Their way of eliminating human suffering was to fold every single timeline into one, and if they couldn't eliminate suffering through this, they would end humanity so it could be free of suffering. Let me clarify that for you, because fold every timeline into one sounds like a lot of nothing. Raise your hand for me and open and close it. There's a timeline where I told you to snap your fingers instead. There's a timeline where I said clap your hands. Those are the only events that are in any way different between those two timelines. This sentence, everything before and after it, and all the history of the world and universe at large.
The idea is that the multiverse is essentially based on choice, and every choice that anyone and any creature and anything has ever made has caused a divergent timeline, etc., and that they all exist, just slightly at different vibrations from each other. So every choice you could have ever made in your life has happened and has created a different universe and different timeline, and also thus every other person, being, creature, etc. So there's literally an infinite number of infinite timelines out there. So they're talking about folding like literally every single infinite timeline out there into one simple timeline to remove all suffering. So the ability to do that is beyond, any kind of godlike power that the chaos gods in the 40K universe probably are capable of.
Are still the same. The Transcendents wanted to forcibly merge every single variation of that choice and every single other timeline created by different choices and events in history into one. They had the capability to do it.
And yeah, listening to this is making me want to play Stellaris too. I've never really paid attention to it, but it sounds like a game, honestly, I would be interested in.
But they were gods. They were, to put it lightly, transcendent. They could turn you into a mathematical equation and force you to watch the universe die of premature heat death because you, in particular, pissed them off. Of course, even describing the transcendent as pissed off is tricky because emotions as we understand them just don't fit the bill.
Exist.
And even they were nothing in the end because, to repeat myself, the Zeely were to them what the Transcendence was to us what we are to ants. With one singular practical exception, the Zeely are unstoppable. Entire galactic superclusters are construction material to them. The Transcendents were tryhards stepping out of their league and were stomped back into the Stone Age along with the rest of humanity by the Zeely.
So, a race of transcendent humans that wanted to fold all timelines together into one to end human suffering is nothing to this race called the Zeely. Okay. That's something. That's something.
Zeely. They have existed since the moment the universe formed after the Big Bang, and when that wasn't enough for their plans, they built an AI called the Anti-Zeely that would go back in time to give them a billion-year head start on civilization building.
What?
The stuff their constructs are made out of, rather unimaginatively called Zeely construction material, is 100% energy efficient with absorption. As in, the energy of anything you shoot them with is completely absorbed and ignored, no matter how powerful. To them, a supermassive black hole in the surrounding galaxy isn't a new place to conquer or explore and colonize, it's a computer. The 20,000-year war the ICOG waged against them ended with the Zeely leaving the galaxy not because mankind truly won, but because the Zeely were sick of humanity's crap and left them to their fate. For a good chunk of the war, the Zeely just ignored humanity because mankind was that far beneath them. And by the way, when I say the Zeely, I don't mean the race of the Zeely. I mean the Zeely, singular, who was in the Milky Way galaxy. They used entire galaxies to construct a ring millions of light years across that would send them to entirely different realities. Their weapons could bisect entire galaxies, and their leftover junk was the sort of thing that catapulted lesser species into a golden age. They were the undisputed masters of baryonic matter. You, your house, your school, your place of work, if it can be considered a thing, the Zeely can rework it and the laws of physics that make it possible to suit their needs. And in what you might consider a bit of a twist, they were ultimately benevolent. Their ring wasn't a weapon, it was an escape route, because the only thing capable of beating the Masters of Matter were the Masters of Dark Matter, the Photino birds. All you need to know about them is that the Zeely were fighting a war against them and losing badly.
These sound like the creatures in that SCP tale about the creation of the second High Toth or whatever, and the sun holding a being that's trying to fend off these dark creatures. That's what this sounds like.
The birds were introducing premature heat death into the...
Yeah, this universe sounds wild. This sounds very intriguing.
Entire universe for the sole reason of making reality more comfortable to them. The Zeely time traveled back to the beginning of existence itself to get themselves a head start, because otherwise they couldn't save anyone from a universe that would die billions of years early. And it's at least partially implied that the birds weren't even aware they were fighting a war against the Zeely. The setting isn't going to win against 40K. The setting isn't...
Like, every faction that they make, or I've talked about here, the next faction, like, sees that faction as nothing, and they're already on a scale of anything. Like, the first faction of transcendent humans was already beyond anything that I understand the Chaos Gods would even be able to do, and then the race above them, like, okay, all right, well, yeah, talk about taking things to the maximum. It sounds like this universe is that.
Going to realize it and 40K are in a war. You know what the kicker is? This setting, with all of its tech that could rewrite 40K out of existence? With time-traveling AI, rewriting of the laws of physics, and objects that can take the force of the Big Bang and not even notice? It's hard sci-fi. The biggest scientific inaccuracies within the Zeely sequence aren't because that's not how reality works, they're because our understanding of science has advanced since the books were written. Their time travel works because of general relativity and how approaching light speed warps time and space around you. Changing universal constants like the Silver Ghost do, who by the way aren't even particularly powerful within the setting, would result in AI with infinite computation power that can give you the answer to your question before you ask it. In theory, almost everything in these books is or was considered fully possible to one degree or another. Have fun with that thought. A few other things popped in my head that I couldn't think of enough words to make entire segments out of, but wanted to mention them regardless. For starters, I lied about there being no more anime because Gurren Lagann is up first. Explain to me how 40K is going to fight this thing off. You can't grimdark only war your way into beating it. Simon has decided he is manlier than you are, so you lost. I don't make the rules, it just happens. Doom also wins pretty handily, I'd wager. I don't mean the demons or makers, I mean the Doomslayer. That's all that's needed. If you drop the Doomslayer...
See, I mean, that's kind of interesting to me, right? And again, like, there was a video that Major Kill did about this specific topic. And again, like, what we learn in Doom Eternal is that the Doomslayer was essentially enhanced by Hell Powers itself. So I personally would think that would probably put him on a similar level to, you know, a Demon Primarch, though I guess, spoilers, if you haven't played Doom Eternal and you want to, spoilers, but he essentially destroys, obviously, you know, Satan and God himself, because it turns out in Doom Eternal that God is actually the bad guy. And so you destroy God, who's the creator of everything, because that's how badass you are. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, he kills God in Doom Eternal. So, I mean, he would have the ability, I guess, at that point to kill any kind of chaos gods, which would put him above any kind of Primarchs, you know, and demon Primarchs, I guess, if you consider that. But again, it's I don't know how the universes really compare in that scenario, right? Because again, in Doom Eternal, the story is that he was a normal human that was turned into a gladiator, and then Vega took him apart because he was such a great warrior and enhanced him with this machine with Hell Essence to be a deterrent to like God turning evil or something like that, if I remember correctly. And to either imprison or destroy God should God decide he wanted to destroy everything, kind of a situation. So like, I don't know how you would really be able to compare that, right? So
into the Great Rift, within weeks there is no more Great Rift, and everyone else would be too terrified of the guy to do anything about him. Except Malum Cato, maybe. They'd probably be good friends. And individual beings from Age of Sigmar could probably do pretty well in 40k. This is another one of those things that would probably be worth its own video, but in brief, the gods and the mortal realms would do just fine if nothing else. Nagash would very promptly become ascendant in a way like never before, because there was a whole lot of death going around. Tyrion and Teclis could revitalize the Eldar, if for no other reason than the elves and the fantasy side of Warhammer are infinitely more competent than their 40k cousins. And if you drop the Great Horned Rat into 40k, he probably wouldn't even realize he's in the wrong setting. He just set about making Hive Worlds somehow even worse to live on than they already are. Oh, and Gotrek. Gotrek would murder anything that tries to get in his way still. Doesn't matter what. He's looking for Felix, and by God, if he has to slaughter demon Primarchs to find him, then that's just what he's gonna do. And really, I think that sums about everything up. I mean, I can keep going with settings, sure, but I wanted a nice variety for the video of can't beat 40k and can beat 40k, and I think I got that. So you may ask, what was the point of this? Well, there's actually two takeaways here. If I put all of this under a guise of matching settings up against Warhammer, I get to talk about things I like without it sinking my channel's analytics. You've all been fooled by my master scheme, get own-zoned. But also, who really cares how OP a setting is? Does it really matter if some schmuck from another setting can beat the Emperor? Enjoy the setting for the wild and wacky stuff you can find in it you can't quite find anywhere else. I just think it's cool to imagine things like Night Houses going against Assault Lances while the Primarchs and Captain America duke it out in the foreground. It's silly, it's got the same energy as smashing two different action figures together as a kid, and in my mind that's the ideal way to view 40k. Not as the narrative version of a dick measuring contest. Thank you as always to my wonderful channel members. You are the overpowered piece of technology to my Warhammer fan, letting me shout into the internet about nothing of particular importance. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to subscribe or become a member. Either way, thank you for watching, have a Merry Christmas, and take care out there.
Alright, well there we go. There we go. That was 40k Isn't That Overpowered by Pancreas Nowhere. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely plenty of settings out there that are far crazier and have things that, yeah, could destroy 40k and vice versa. It all just depends on what you're comparing what to. For my brain, when I think about comparing 40k to another setting, it's something that is another kind of setting of a grand scale. Again, something like a Star Wars or Star Trek, generally sci-fi oriented, but something that, you know, that has lots of different races with advanced technologies that have a pretty rich and large lore behind them, you know, etc. And there's definitely going to be races out there or settings out there that could destroy 40k, and there's plenty of settings that 40k could destroy, you know. I really actually would, you know, thinking about it from the beginning, if someone would be able to, because I still don't necessarily know enough about 40k in my opinion to kind of really compare it. I do know I love Star Trek, and I've, you know, watched everything Star Trek pretty much, other, you know, at least the old stuff from, you know, the original show, all the, you know, Kirk movies, and then TNG and all the TNG movies, and then through Voyager, Deep Space Nine, and Enterprise. But after that, I don't know, you know, like the newer J.J. Abrams movies were okay, the first two anyway. The third one was and then the newer Star Trek stuff, Discovery, Strange New Worlds, all that. Season 1 of Picard was okay. Season 2 of Picard was trash. Season 3 of Picard is some of the best Star Trek, and definitely would recommend it. It's worth just for that. But it would be interesting comparing at least ship-to-ship battling, what Star Trek would be able to do, or races in the Star Trek universe like the Borg, you know, etc., versus certain matchups in the 40K universe. Like, obviously, if Space Marines were to board, you know, a Federation ship, I think the Federation would definitely lose. You know, just when you start getting into close-up combat, hand-to-hand combat, stuff like that, you know, the Space Marines would be able to stomp any kind of, you know, personnel, soldiers, whatever you want to call them, guards, on any kind of Federation ship. I mean, I guess it would depend on how well the armor of the Space Marines would be able to deal with phasers and phaser rifles and things like that. I don't know, it'd be interesting. But I think as far as like ship-to-ship battle goes, I might even give it to Star Trek, just because of the shielding and their weapons technology, their warp capabilities, being able to probably detect 40K ships before 40K ships might be able to detect them potentially. And just the fact that they could travel around without having to go through the warp. I don't know. It would be interesting. That would be a video that I would like to see and see more opinions about. But yeah, great video. It's always interesting to speculate and bring up discussions on things like this. You know, with how overpowered a lot of things are in the 40K universe. There's always someone bigger, you know. That's how things are. So but yeah, again, that was Pinker's No Work was 40K Isn't That Overpowered. Links will be down below in the description as always to the original video and to his channel. So please do me a favor, if you enjoyed this video of his, go over there and give it a like. And if you enjoy the content the man puts out on his channel, please do me a favor, hit that sub button and give the man some love. If you'd like to join us in our discussions here, as I do a lot of these reactions live with my YouTube members, as I am right now, love to have you guys come in and hang out and join our discussions. There's a join button underneath this video, as well as a link in the description to the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I offer. So if you've been around the channel for a while, decide you want to take your support to the next level, check all that out. See if any of that would have any interest for you if you want to join. But that's gonna do it for this one, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider leaving a like and a sub. It helps me and the channel grow. And we'll see you guys next time. Have yourselves a wonderful day, everyone, and we'll see you